If you're wondering why he's drifting away and what you should do about it, stop right there. Because the most powerful response isn't a text, it's a shift in energy. Listen carefully. You don't need to block him, and you definitely don't need to beg. What you need is a shift in mindset. The most powerful move you can make right now is to do absolutely nothing. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. I'm going to show you exactly what to do instead and why it works. Ready? Let's begin. Silence isn't weakness. It's one of the most powerful tools you have when you're trying to rebuild your confidence, protect your energy, and change the dynamics in a relationship. We live in a world where constant communication is expected. If you don't reply quickly, it sparks anxiety and assumptions. Silence is often mistaken for passivity or coldness. But here's the truth. When someone starts pulling away, playing games, or not showing up for you the way they should, the worst thing you can do is keep reaching out. Silence in this scenario isn't manipulation, it's self-respect. When you stop texting first, you're not just holding back your thumbs. You're reclaiming your emotional space. You're saying, I'm not going to keep investing in someone who won't meet me halfway. And even though it might feel uncomfortable, that is a power move. That is you taking control of your story, instead of letting someone else shape how you feel about yourself. The moment you choose silence over chasing is when you start breaking the cycle of emotional dependency, because that's what it is. Every time you text hoping for a reply or some form of validation, you're reinforcing the belief that your worth depends on someone else's attention, but it doesn't. Silence brings clarity. It makes both of you sit with the truth. It gives them the space to wonder, to notice your absence, to reflect, because they're no longer constantly exposed to your presence. And it gives you space too, to breathe, to reflect, to ask what you truly want, and to build emotional discipline. Most people don't realize how much energy they're spending checking their phones for someone who barely responds, analyzing every message or silence. It's exhausting. It steals your peace, your focus, and the simple joy of just living your life. Silence breaks that cycle. More importantly, it changes the power balance. If you're always the one initiating, it sends a message. You're willing to overextend, to overgive, to wait. But when you stop, it creates a vacuum. And people feel that, especially someone who's used to always having you there. Suddenly your voice is missing, your energy is gone. And that absence speaks louder than any text ever could. It tells them that your self-worth isn't linked to their responses. That's powerful. Let's be real. Silence might feel like punishment at first, not just to them, but to you. You'll want to break it. You'll want to explain, to fix, to reconnect. But each time you sit with that discomfort and choose not to act, you build self-trust. You prove to yourself that you can handle the distance between what you want and what you deserve. You're not being passive, you're being intentional. You're releasing the need to control how someone else shows up. And instead, you're reclaiming control over how you show up for yourself. Silence doesn't scream. That's why people confuse it with weakness. But power doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes the strongest message is the one you never send. It says, I'm no longer available for the version of me who had to beg just to be seen. That's not cold, that's not dramatic, that's healing, that's growth. And when you start moving from that place of strength, everything starts to shift, especially how people treat you. Your energy is a mirror. The way you carry yourself, speak, and treat yourself teaches others how to treat you. You model what's acceptable by what you tolerate and allow. When you constantly chase, overextend, or mold yourself just to be chosen, you're sending a message, one that says, I don't believe I'm enough on my own. People pick up on that. Not always because they want to hurt you, but because your energy signals that they don't need to step up. When you operate from a place of insecurity or desperation, it creates an imbalance. That energy is felt, even if it's not spoken aloud. What you project emotionally gets reflected back to you. If you move through relationships filled with anxiety, waiting for texts, decoding mixed signals, fearing abandonment, you give off an energy of doubt and fear, and that pushes people away. Not because you're unlovable, but because you're communicating that you don't think you're worthy. But when you show up calm, steady, and secure, even in silence, you send a completely different signal, one that says, I'm okay either way. I'm not chasing, I'm not begging, I'm not performing for love. I accept myself. And confidence, true grounded confidence, draws people in. Not because it's loud or flashy, but because it's stable. It feels safe. When your energy is built on self-respect, everything shifts. You stop needing to explain yourself, to over-communicate, or to desperately keep someone's attention. You're not sending follow-up messages hoping for a reply. You're not checking your phone waiting for someone to validate you. You already know your worth. And that kind of quiet confidence commands respect without demanding it. There's a massive difference between wanting someone and needing their attention to feel whole. When you stop depending on others for your sense of value and instead stand firm in who you are, something incredible happens. Space opens. That space creates contrast. People start to notice. They notice that you no longer react emotionally to every delay, disappointment, or distant message. They notice that you've stopped making your life revolve around someone who never truly showed up for you. And that's when the shift begins. It's usually in your absence that people recognize your presence. When you stop pouring your energy out, they finally see how much of it they had. Your energy is contagious. If you show up anxious and needy, it creates distance. But if you show up grounded and secure, it invites closeness. That's rare. And that's magnetic. Most people are trapped in patterns of trying too hard or giving too much. When you break that pattern, when you remain still, grounded, and firm in your self-worth, it changes everything. You no longer need to say a word. Your energy does the talking. And this doesn't just apply to romantic relationships. It shows up everywhere, with friends, family, co-workers. Every connection in your life mirrors the energy you bring. So ask yourself, what are you radiating? Confidence or insecurity? Calm or chaos? Assurance or desperation? Because whatever you're giving off is exactly what you'll keep getting back. And when you stop trying to make someone care and instead start showing care for yourself, your energy rises, and people feel that rise. Some will be drawn to it. Others will feel unsettled because the version of you they were used to, the always available, always reliable version, is gone. But either way, it's a mirror. And once you understand that your energy reflects who you are, you'll stop chasing people and start attracting alignment. You'll realize that love was never something you had to chase. You just had to become it. Stop playing emotional ping pong. Every time you react to someone's inconsistency, a delayed reply, a vague message, emotional distance, you're stepping back into a cycle that drains you. And let's be honest, it's exhausting. You text, they vanish. You pull back, they reappear. You try to talk, they shut down. And the cycle continues. That's not connection. That's a loop of false hope and short-term validation that keeps you emotionally stuck. Worse, it conditions your nervous system to associate love with anxiety, unpredictability, and confusion. But that isn't love. That's emotional chaos. And the only way to stop playing the game is to put the paddle down and walk away. Every time you respond out of fear or frustration, you feed the imbalance. You teach yourself to accept crumbs. You believe that maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe if you say the right thing, text at the right time, or keep things peaceful, they'll finally see you. But here's the truth. Real love isn't hard to read. It doesn't make you guess. It doesn't come with disclaimers or leave you in the dark. When someone truly values you, you don't have to work overtime for clarity. Love isn't a riddle. When someone is serious, they're consistent. They respect your time, your emotions, your presence. And if you're always second-guessing yourself, analyzing what they really meant, or feeling unsettled, you're not in a healthy relationship. You're trapped in an emotional maze. You need to understand that your reaction gives them power, not just over the moment, but over your self-worth. Every time you respond to breadcrumb behavior, you confirm that their inconsistency is enough to keep you hooked. And your peace? You've handed it over. If they take hours to reply and you respond instantly, you're sending a message. My attention isn't earned, it's expected. If they disappear and return like nothing happened and you welcome them back without a boundary, you're saying, you can treat me however you want. I'll still be here. Walking away doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough to stop entertaining what hurts, confuses, or belittles you. You don't need the last word. You don't have to explain why you're stepping back. And you definitely don't need closure from someone who never gave you clarity. What you need is space. Space to reset, space to breathe, space to remember who you were before your self-worth became tied to someone's sporadic attention. That space is where healing begins. And don't let guilt or fear convince you that silence is cruel. You're not being rude, you're being real. If someone's behavior is hurting you, ignoring it isn't mature, it's avoidance. Choosing silence in that situation isn't disrespect. It's self-protection. It's you saying, I'm not playing this game anymore. I'm choosing peace instead of patterns. I'm choosing growth over guessing. You can care deeply about someone and still choose not to engage with their inconsistency. Loving someone doesn't mean accepting chaos as your emotional baseline. Your heart deserves more than being tossed around based on someone's mood. It deserves to be held with consistency, with care, with clarity. So when you feel the urge to reach out, to smooth things over, to jump back in, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I trying to be heard or am I reacting out of fear? The answer matters because one response comes from strength and the other comes from survival. And you weren't born to survive someone's emotional roller coaster. You were born to thrive in love that's safe, clear, and steady. Put the paddle down. Let them play alone. You're done. You can't control if he texts you back. You can't make him see your worth or force him to show up the way you hoped. You can't make him realize what he lost. But what you can control, what's always been yours, is you. Your reactions, your mindset, your choices. That's where your real power lies. Not in trying to make a connection happen, not in obsessing over his next move, but in owning how you respond when things feel uncertain. Too many people spend their energy chasing clarity from someone else, but the truth, clarity comes from within. And the more you try to control someone else's behavior, the more you surrender control over your own peace. Trying to change someone, trying to get them to see you differently is a losing battle. It drains you and hands over your emotional well-being. Suddenly, every day becomes a waiting game. You check your phone more than you check in with yourself. You replay conversations, search for hidden meaning, reread texts for clues, and before you know it, your mood is dictated by whether or not they replied. That's not connection. That's emotional captivity, and it's completely avoidable. The shift begins when you stop asking, why isn't he texting me? And start asking, why am I giving this so much of my energy? Because your attention is powerful. Wherever you place it, your thoughts follow. If you stay focused on waiting for a message, you'll stay stuck. But if you redirect that focus to your peace, your growth, your purpose, you take your power back. The spiral stops the moment you decide to shift inward. This isn't about pretending to be strong. This is about being strong. It's about putting your energy into what builds you up instead of what breaks you down. You don't need to decode what he's thinking. What matters more is, what are you thinking? Are you holding yourself to a higher standard? Are you showing up for yourself when someone else falls short? Are you creating a life that feels good with or without someone else's validation? Because when you stop trying to get someone to act a certain way and instead focus on how you act, everything feels lighter. You breathe easier. You stop waiting. And ironically, that's often when they start noticing. People feel it when your energy shifts. You go from emotionally available on demand to present for yourself first. That's magnetic. That's power. Not the kind that forces or pushes, but the kind that grounds and attracts. People are drawn to those who don't beg to be chosen. They're drawn to those who have already chosen themselves. It's okay to want someone to reach out. That's human. But don't let your day or your self-worth hinge on a notification. Don't let that one text define how valuable you feel. You can want connection and still practice emotional discipline. That means you still take your walk, you still go to the gym, you still work, write, heal, grow, even if they never reply. That's real strength. That's what builds momentum, because control isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about choosing your response. And every time you choose not to text, not to spiral, not to let your mood be hijacked, you're building a stronger version of you. One who stops tolerating emotional inconsistency. One who realizes love isn't something you chase, it's something you align with. Alignment begins with ownership. So own your time, own your energy, own your peace, because at the end of the day, how you show up for you is what changes everything. The version of you that chases, overthinks, and compromises just to be chosen, that's not the real you. That's the survival you, the version shaped by fear, fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten, fear of rejection. But the real you, she's grounded, she's steady, she's whole, she doesn't beg, she doesn't chase, and she never shrinks to fit into someone else's comfort zone. The real you knows her value isn't based on who stays, who texts back, or who notices her worth. And the more you stop seeking validation from outside, the closer you get to becoming her. But reconnecting with that version of you, it takes discipline. It means walking away from conversations that keep looping. It means choosing silence when your ego wants to send a long explanation. It means resisting the urge to settle just to escape the discomfort of uncertainty. That's where your strength is built, in the space between what you feel and what you know you deserve. When you choose peace instead of proving your worth, you're not giving up, you're rising. You're letting go of the need to earn love and stepping into the truth that you already are love. You stop trying to be enough for someone who refuses to see you, and instead you become everything for yourself. Because you weren't created to live in confusion. You weren't made to constantly question your place in someone's life. That feeling of unease, of walking on eggshells, replaying conversations, doubting yourself, that's not love. That's emotional noise. And the real you doesn't belong in noise. She belongs in clarity. To get there, you've got to unlearn the habit of emotional chasing. You've got to stop thinking that being more agreeable, more available, more accommodating will earn you love. It won't. Real love doesn't make you perform, it sees you. And the real you doesn't perform. She shows up honestly, fully, freely. She lets what's meant for her rise to meet her. There's a part of you that already knows exactly what you deserve. But when you've been surviving on crumbs for so long, even silence can feel like rejection. That's why people often go back to what hurts them, not because it feels good, but because it feels familiar. Familiar isn't the same as safe. Predictable isn't the same as peaceful. You deserve to feel secure, not suspicious. You deserve consistency, not chaos. And when you finally get tired of riding the emotional roller coaster, you'll understand choosing yourself isn't lonely, it's liberating. This isn't about cutting people off or building walls. It's about no longer opening your heart to things that drain you. The real you doesn't tolerate hot and cold behavior. She doesn't check her phone every 5 minutes looking for proof she matters. She's too busy building, too busy healing, too focused on becoming her best self. And yes, that version of you might unsettle some people, especially those who benefited from your lack of boundaries, because she can't be manipulated. She's not desperate. She's guided by self-respect. And self-respect has a frequency. It repels what's not meant for you and attracts what is. But you only reach that frequency when you stop abandoning yourself in relationships that don't give back. You don't need to beg to be seen. You need to see yourself. To remember who you were before heartbreak made you question your value. Before mixed signals clouded your intuition. Before you started thinking you had to fight to be loved. The real you doesn't fight to be seen. She stands still, and the right ones recognize her. And the more you step into that version of yourself, the more everything shifts. Your energy changes. People feel it. Even if they don't say it out loud, they realize they can't treat you the same way anymore because you're not available for the old games. You've outgrown the version of you that was okay being almost loved. You've upgraded. Now you're stepping into wholeness. Waiting can be one of the hardest things, especially when your heart is involved and your mind keeps racing. But learning how to wait with intention, not panic or desperation, is a game changer. Waiting isn't about sitting around hoping someone shows up. It's about standing strong in self-respect. It's about trusting that the right things come when you no longer chase the wrong ones. Instead of begging for attention or forcing a connection, you hold your ground. And in doing so, you grow. A lot of people confuse waiting with weakness, but waiting with self-awareness takes more courage than chasing. It means you're willing to trust in your worth, your timing, and your boundaries even when the outcome is unclear. Waiting is faith. Faith in yourself, in your growth, in the truth that what's meant for you won't pass you by. Your value isn't tied to a fast reply or instant validation. It's in the consistent way you honor yourself. And when you choose to wait with strength, you're not pretending to be okay. You're not ignoring your feelings. You're just choosing not to let those feelings control you. There's a big difference between patience and passivity. Patience means holding space for possibility without sacrificing your peace. It means staying rooted in your truth instead of refreshing your phone and spiraling over silence. It means choosing your focus wisely on your healing, your goals, your peace. That kind of waiting builds resilience. It teaches you to be comfortable with the unknown. You stop reacting to every text or lack thereof and start responding with calm and clarity. This is how you break the cycle. This is how you evolve. Silence and space carry their own quiet power. When you stop trying to fill the void with texts, explanations, or overreaching, you create room for understanding, room for perspective, room for the other person to feel the weight of your absence. Sometimes, space is what makes someone finally see your value. But even more important, waiting with intention means you're not available for anything less than respect. You're not compromising just because you're craving connection. This kind of waiting takes emotional discipline, and that discipline is the backbone of real maturity. It's easy to want something. It's harder to wait for it the right way. But when you do, you prove to yourself that your peace matters more than temporary comfort. You stop settling for crumbs. You stop explaining yourself to people who never truly listened. You start hearing your own voice again and trusting it. You tune into your intuition. You raise your standards. You let go of people who don't prioritize you. And in doing so, you make room for those who will. You stop seeing waiting as holding on. Instead, you start seeing it as letting go of what no longer fits. And when you do move forward, whether it's reconnecting, letting go, or starting fresh, you do it with clarity, with confidence. You're not reacting anymore. You're choosing. That's when love becomes real. That's when connection becomes mutual. Because now it's built on respect, not fear, on truth, not tension, on presence, not panic. Waiting isn't easy, but it's a radical act of self-love. It transforms how you move, how you think, how you love. It shifts your energy from grasping to growing, from clinging to trusting, from chaos to calm. And that shift, it changes everything. As you step away from chasing and start standing firmly in your peace, never forget, your worth isn't up for negotiation. You don't need to perform, to prove, or to plead. You only need to remember who you are and show up as her, fully. Because when you do that, when you hold your boundaries with grace and stay grounded in your truth, you don't just wait. You rise,